What encouraged you to participate at the FOAM event and share your knowledge with others?
These events are great for understanding the state of practice that's being done out in the field. I mean, talking to the people who participate in giving the talks, but also the audience, you learn very quickly what is actually being done, what's working, and just as importantly, what's not working in the field. And for an academic like myself, and when we're looking for what direction we should go, okay, and this is the customer base. So without this, it all becomes just academic, and that's not where we want to be. We want to be solving problems that are real.
Yeah. Why do you think obsolescence is such a hot topic today?
Obviously, one can go back to the history of the whole space and say, hey, when folks lost control of the supply chain, which most people in this conference don't control the supply chain for their parts, then you have obsolescence problems. And that's true throughout electronic parts and everything else. So I think that, it's hot today. It's not going to be any less hot tomorrow. The problem isn't going away anytime soon. There's no sort of golden bullet out there that's going to make it evaporate and we'll have a conference on something else next year. No, it's a constant in my mind.
So what do you see as the biggest threat for the security of the supply chain?
I mean, no question that counterfeit parts are a big threat. That's well known, of course. There are other kinds of threats that sort of come and go. We had threats years ago of changeover to lead-free parts, for instance, and tin whiskers, and there'll be another one of those that will show up on the view screen here within the next year, and then another one after that. So there'd be lots of threats, but probably counterfeit parts is the biggest constant in all of that.
So what advice could you give to customers and companies who are dealing with these challenges?
I think we always give sort of one version of advice, and that's think strategically. There's a lot of motivation to think through these problems and solve these sort of problems very tactically. We can't procure a part today. What do we do in the short term to ease the pain, to fight the fire? And people are unwilling to think strategically. Think about what can I do today, even though it's going to cost some money today, to make sure I have less problems to deal with 5 years or 10 years down the road. And that's a tough one. I mean, I realize there are practicalities here. That's a tough one, okay? Spending money that's going to help the next generation of people in my position is hard.
What do you think is the role of senior management in this process?
Well, I think they're very much the people who have to drive the strategic solution. Okay, the engineers may carry it out, but they have to buy into it. Okay, so this is the hard one, is that you have to be able to make, number one, a business case, okay, for thinking strategically. And that's where a lot of people fall apart. Engineers are not trained necessarily to make business cases. They may know what the best thing to do is, but putting that in a language that senior management will understand and that potentially the customer will buy into is not trivial. And that's where a lot of people could gain or be helped, okay, by having the tools to do that.
Yeah. That led me exactly to the next question. Let's say a friend of you will enter the world of obsolescence management. Mm-hmm. What advice can you give him?
I think advice that I would give somebody just coming into the space is understand what the tools and the databases are out there. Understand what they can and won't do for you. Look at the state-of-the-art folks. Okay, figure out how they use all those resources. Because that's your clue into, or that's where that gathered corporate knowledge is about how to best use the resources that are out there. obsolescence management is an interesting space because I think we're a little unique because we're an academic institution. And there aren't a lot of academic institutions or academia in general that are really involved in this space, okay? And that's unfortunate, okay? Because I think there's probably innovative thinking that could be done in academia, but it's hard to get them interested, okay? And part of that is a case of the people who fund the academics are not, or they don't recognize, okay, the area of obsolescence, and maybe broaden it out, the area of sort of aging supply chain, of which obsolescence and counterfeit are a piece. They don't recognize this as really a fundamental problem. They think this is something that engineers will simply solve, and don't encourage the academics to think about it. So I think that's unfortunate. I think there's a lot of knowledge and experience and sort of operations research and things like that that could be brought to bear on obsolescence management problems.
Yeah.
And it's simply...
Yeah, definitely. Obsolescence is not a sexy topic.
It's not a sexy topic in academic literature, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And that makes it a bit of an uphill battle for people like me who have to publish journal papers and this sort of thing in this space to make it legitimate to our peers in academia. And those peers are looking at it going, I'm not sure this is really science, and so that makes an uphill battle. But if one could find a way to make it more palatable to academia, then I think there would be a whole world of different kinds of solutions and forecasting and things like that would come about.
Definitely, couldn't agree more.
So,
any word about how do you find the FOM event?
I think that it's wonderful to have the conversation, and it's great to get together people working in the space, not to just trade war stories, and trading war stories, it has value for sure, but to also sort of compare notes on who's doing what and figure out what best practices are. I mean, that's the real value, because if everybody goes away and simply works in their own little silo, okay, things, are not nearly as efficient. So, sort of high tide floats all boats here. If you can tell me what you're doing, I'll tell you what I'm doing, and we can horse trade some parts, so while we're doing it. So.